Harry Kane scored twice, Jude Bellingham added another. Marcus Rashford finished the job late. England defeated Croatia 4-2 in one of the most entertaining World Cup opening matches in recent memory. A match full of goals, full of drama, full of storylines. And yet, the moment-dominating conversation the next morning wasn't any of them. It was a chorus of boos. 22 minutes into the first half, the referee stopped play. Players walked toward the touchline. Coaches rushed over with instructions. The giant crowd inside AT&T Stadium responded immediately, not with applause, not with patience, with anger. The boos were loud enough to cut through the television broadcast. This wasn't directed at England, it wasn't directed at Croatia, it wasn't even directed at the referee. The frustration was aimed at FIFA because the tournament's mandatory hydration break had arrived, and for thousands of supporters inside the stadium, it made absolutely no sense. The roof was closed, the air conditioning was running, and temperatures inside the stadium were comfortable, yet the match stopped anyway. One fan posted a reaction that spread across social media within minutes. Roof closed, air conditioning on, why are we having a hydration break? I hate this American World Cup. That sentence quickly became bigger than a complaint about a few minutes of football. Because the boos in Dallas revealed something deeper. Only 1 week into the tournament, fans were beginning to ask a question FIFA never wanted them to ask. Who exactly is this World Cup being designed for? For years, FIFA sold a vision, the largest tournament in football history. 48 nations, 104 matches, 3 host countries, more fans. More cities, more opportunities, more football. Gianni Infantino repeatedly described World Cup 2026 using almost identical language. The biggest, the most inclusive, the most accessible, the greatest World Cup ever staged. The numbers were extraordinary. Billions of viewers, billions in revenue, record-breaking attendance, a football festival unlike anything the sport had ever seen, and on paper, much of that remains true. The scale is undeniable. But scale and experience are not the same thing. Because 1 week into the tournament, fans weren't discussing attendance records, they weren't discussing revenue projections. They weren't talking about FIFA's business success, they were talking about interruptions, restrictions, rules, and decisions that felt increasingly disconnected from the people actually watching the matches. The gap between FIFA's promise and the reality on the ground was beginning to grow, and nowhere was that gap more visible than in the hydration break controversy. To be clear, player safety is real. Long before kickoff, climate researchers warned that several host cities could experience dangerous conditions. Heat exhaustion is not hypothetical, players have collapsed before. Medical experts supported preventative measures. No serious person wants footballers risking their health. But controversy rarely comes from the existence of a rule, it comes from how that rule is applied. Because fans watching matches in extreme heat often understood the need for hydration breaks, the confusion appeared elsewhere, inside climate-controlled stadiums, inside enclosed venues, inside environments where the original justification seemed harder to see. Former England striker Ian Wright voiced what many supporters were already thinking. He suggested the breaks felt suspiciously convenient, not just for players, but for broadcasters. 3-minute stoppages, every match, every game divided into smaller segments, and every segment creating new commercial opportunities. Whether that was FIFA's intention or not, perception matters. And perception was becoming a problem, because for generations, football sold itself on one unique promise. Once the game began, it flowed. No timeouts, no scheduled advertising interruptions, no quarter breaks, no television pauses. Now for the first time, many fans felt that principle was beginning to change. On its own, a hydration break is not a crisis, but football fans rarely judge decisions in isolation. They look for patterns, and many supporters believe they're seeing one. This World Cup introduced another historic first, a full entertainment halftime show for the final, a concept borrowed directly from American sports culture. Some fans welcomed it, others saw it differently. For decades, football resisted becoming a spectacle built around interruptions. The match was always the event, everything else happened around it. Now critics worry the balance may be shifting, not because football is becoming American, but because football is becoming increasingly commercial, and those aren't necessarily the same thing. Every major sport faces the same pressure: more viewers, more sponsors, more revenue, more content. The question is whether football can expand without losing the characteristics that made it unique in the first place. That debate is no longer theoretical, it's happening in real time, during the biggest World Cup ever created. Then came another controversy, this time involving identity. Days before the tournament, Egypt were instructed to remove 7 stars from their shirts. Each star represented an Africa Cup of Nations title, 7 championships, more than any other African nation, a symbol of pride built over generations. FIFA's explanation was straightforward. According to tournament regulations, stars above a national crest represent World Cup victories. Egypt had never won one, therefore, the stars had to go. Technically, the decision followed the rulebook. But football supporters don't always judge decisions based on technical correctness, they judge them emotionally. To many Egyptians, those stars weren't claiming World Cup success. They were celebrating African success, a completely different achievement, and once again, a familiar criticism emerged. The regulations may have been consistent, but consistency doesn't automatically create acceptance, especially when national identity is involved. Then came Haiti, and the reaction became even stronger. The jersey in question featured imagery inspired by the Battle of Versailles, the decisive victory that secured Haitian independence, one of the most important moments in the nation's history. Manufacturers described the design as cultural tribute, not political messaging. FIFA saw it differently. Tournament rules prohibit political symbols. The jersey was withdrawn. Legally, FIFA again had a basis for its decision, but legally correct and publicly accepted are not always the same thing. For many Haitians, this wasn't politics, it was history, identity, memory, pride, and seeing those symbols removed felt personal. The debate quickly spread beyond football, because whenever governing bodies decide which symbols are acceptable and which are not, controversy becomes almost inevitable. Individually, none of these stories are catastrophic. The football has been excellent. The stadiums are full. The stars are performing. The tournament remains a success by many traditional measures. But public opinion is rarely shaped by one major event. It's shaped by accumulation. A hydration break here, a jersey controversy there, ticket complaints, travel issues, visa complications, another headline, then another, and another. Eventually, fans stop seeing separate incidents. They begin seeing a pattern. Whether that pattern is real or not almost becomes irrelevant, because perception starts driving the conversation, and perception is becoming one of FIFA's biggest challenges. Not convincing fans the World Cup is successful, but convincing them the tournament still belongs to them. The boos inside Dallas lasted only a few seconds. The match continued. England won. The crowd celebrated. Life moved on. But those boos captured something important, because they weren't really about water, they weren't really about 3 minutes, and they certainly weren't about one football match. They were about ownership, about identity, about who gets to shape the experience of the world's biggest sporting event. World Cup 2026 was always supposed to be remembered for its scale and its attendance, its records, its expansion. Instead, only 1 week in, it is already generating a different conversation. How much change is too much change? How much commercialization is acceptable? And who ultimately decides what football should become? The football itself has been brilliant, but the biggest story of this World Cup may not be happening on the pitch. It may be happening in the growing tension between a governing body trying to build the future and supporters trying to protect what they believe made the game special in the first place. And that debate is only just beginning.